Today is February 9th, 2023, and this is Conversations from Stritch. I'm Dave Livingston, president of Lewis University, and as always, I'm joined by our provost, Dr. Christopher Sint. I just got back last night. Chris and I were in D.C. this past week, both at the Association of Catholic Colleges and University Conference and then the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities Conference. We had some really inspiring speakers on Catholic education and also going to some sessions as well as lobbying for independent higher education. And you know, one of the things that I always take away from this meeting, which happens every year about this time, we hear over and over again, and of course we're trying to tell this story in DC, about the way in which private higher education and Catholic private higher education creates opportunities for diverse students, many of them first gen and Pell eligible. And as a group, so as private higher education in the country, we actually educate more teachers and more nurses in the country than all the privates educate more of those professionals than all of the publics and community colleges. So it's a really interesting thing because I think sometimes people think that private higher education is both too expensive or that we're focusing on, and we're going to talk about some really exciting fine arts things, but that all we focus on is the fine arts and the humanities when in fact we have a lot of practical degrees, and especially Catholic higher education because of how it was founded by a lot of sisters and brothers and priests were focused on, many of them had hospitals and many of them had schools that they ran, and so they were educating people to come into their schools and hospitals. We also were lobbying for an increase in Pell. In the last year, we've had a $500 increase, so next fall, and many of our students, about 30% of our students receive Pell grants. They'll be receiving an extra $500. The other thing we talked to representatives and senators about were about getting more grants to support our strategic plan. And it's great for me to be able to say to Congresswoman Underwood or Senators Durbin or Duckworth that over the last 3 years we've received $14 million in federal grants to support our mission. A lot of those grants have been around issues of underrepresented minorities serving in certain fields that they maybe don't necessarily always serve in. So it's great to be able to, because a lot of times in DC they want to support people who have already shown that they can do it well, and we certainly have done that. A couple other quick things. We do have a faculty and staff appreciation event this afternoon. It's Valentine's Day themed, so if you haven't RSVP'd, please still stop by 4 o'clock in the university dining room. I don't exactly know what the menu is, but it'll be Valentine's themed, so I think there'll probably be hot chocolate and some Valentine's Day sweets that are going to be there. I also want to just make a quick comment. Last time we met a couple weeks ago, I mentioned the Lewis University magazine that had come out, and just said that I would want to just kind of talk about a few of the highlights from the year. One of the things is that for our first year students, the average student gets about 59% of their tuition covered by some form of scholarship. And I just want to just briefly say that those scholarships range. So we have endowed scholarships. Many of our alumni give and create a scholarship either in their parents' honor or in somebody's name to continue to allow students to study something that they study. We were just, when we were in DC, meeting with one of our trustees who has supported the SURE program, not really a scholarship, but an opportunity for students to study with a professor and do primary research over the summer. But we also have our mission fund, which we talk about every year when we do Signum Fidei, our institutional aid, but then also these federal and state grants that I was just talking about that create scholarships for students oftentimes in certain fields with certain criteria. So there's a tie together there, but we feel very proud that many of our students, because of our generous alumni, our relationships to Illinois and DC, have opportunities to afford a Lewis education, and that's something we're really proud of. So there's a lot of other stuff going on campus though, Chris?
Yes. Great to be with everyone, and I was just really enjoying listening to that description, and it was wonderful to be in DC. It's always fun to be off campus, especially among our peers and talking about Lewis with so many people, and hearing about all of the value of Catholic education and independent colleges. It was really powerful, and always makes me really appreciate the work that we are doing here. Part of that $14 million that you mentioned that we have raised in federal grants over the last year includes also state funding to some degree, smaller degree, but I have my first announcement today is about that. The Illinois Board of Higher Education has awarded Lewis University $353,000 to develop a pipeline of new, diverse, and highly qualified early childhood educators. Lewis will use the funds to offer mentorship and support current career and technical educators enrolled in our early childhood education master's degree program, and we're really happy about that. It's an amazing program. It's received we've announced on the show several times, similar grants from the state to really support the development of qualified and diverse and committed and passionate educators in the field of early childhood across the state, and we're really, really happy to be a major partner with the state in that work. After earning an endorsement or a master's degree in early childhood, the career and technical educators will be qualified to facilitate classes in child development and education for high school students in dual credit courses, and along with community colleges and universities. The exhibit, Beyond Representation, Seeking New Forms, will be on view at Lewis University's Brent and Jean Wadsworth Family Gallery through March 16th. I think it opened 2 days ago. We were not here, so I haven't seen it yet. You probably haven't seen it yet either. Looking forward to going over there today. As always, the gallery is open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and it is free and open to the public. The reception and gallery talk with the 4 artists who are featured in the show will take place on February 23rd from 7 to 9 p.m. at the gallery. As I mentioned, it features 4 artists who specialize in abstract expressionism: Ben Dallas, Sally Havlis, Burley Cronquist, and Jenny Roberts are the artists in the show. I'm really looking forward to seeing their work. Please join Lewis University's History Center and Second Baptist Church this weekend in Joliet to learn about the African American history right in Joliet's backyard in a talk and exhibition called From the Past to the Future, Reclaiming the African American Narrative, which will be presented by Morgan Jennings, a student history grant coordinator at the History Center here at Lewis, and that is at 11 a.m. on February 11th. The event's free and open to the public, and it's at the Second Baptist Church in Joliet. Attendees who come will learn of the stories discovered as Lewis University has embarked on a year-long journey to unearth untold stories of Joliet's history, and it is part of the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation's Broadening Narratives initiative, which aims to fund specific collections, projects that bring forward underrepresented stories in communities across the Chicago area. So in addition to a presentation by Morgan, attendees will see a banner exhibit and enjoy a lunch reception with Second Baptist's Senior Club. Sounds like a really fun event, powerful event, and fun to be in that community. February 28th is the deadline to apply for the Dream.USA scholarship at Lewis University. The full tuition scholarship is for academically qualified and highly motivated high school or community college students who meet current immigration eligibility criteria, including DACA or TPS status. Lewis University is a partner college of the Dream.USA, the nation's largest college access and success program for dreamers. This partnership provides scholarships to qualified immigrant students who came to this country as young children or as dreamers. So for a complete listing of eligibility requirements and application information, please visit the Dream.USA website to submit an application before that deadline of February 28th. I strongly encourage you to check that out and apply. So we have quite a few, as always, a lot to report about events.
A lot of events going on.
I'm available to talk with you about some of these things.
That'd be great. And I won't talk about each and every event because there's so many going on, but I did want to say that tonight I'll be speaking to the white coat ceremony for the occupational therapy group. That's, getting your white coat, and the pinning ceremony and the white coat ceremony traditionally in healthcare is one of those times where people symbolically move into their professional clinical practice in a way that we try to name through that, giving them their jackets. I did want to say that this weekend, we talk about a lot of sports, but we started bowling, 2 years ago, Chris? Might be even 3 years ago, but we're hosting over at Strike and Spare in Lockport. Women are hosting the Flyers Classic, and I'll tell you, our women's bowling team has had an amazing year. Really, really incredible. And so if a bunch of you want to get in a car this weekend, pack 4 or 5 people in a car and run over to Lockport and watch women's bowling. The graphics group is going to be putting up tables between 11 and 4 on February 10th to do Valentine's Day cards. So over in the Arts and Science Building, you can do a card if you want. We do have a lacrosse game this weekend, which is hard to believe that it's February 11th and we're hosting lacrosse, but the weather is lacrosse-like, It feels more like spring than it does the middle of winter. The other set of upcoming events, we do have a movie that is being shown. Black Student Union is having a movie night in Memorial Commons. That's February 13th at 6:30, as you can see on the graphic. We also are going to have the Student Nurses Association meeting, and then men's volleyball is hosting Quincy on the 15th at 7 p.m. So a lot of exciting stuff. We also have a bunch of people that are traveling. So this is the local stuff that you can see on campus. But men and women's are competing in the GLVC. We also have men's and women's basketball that'll traveling to William Jewell and Truman State this weekend. And then men's volleyball will be traveling to Ball State on Friday and Ohio State on Saturday. Ohio State is always one of my favorite games when we host them on campus, but you can get online and look at that. And then, of course, women's track and field will be competing at the GVSU Big Meet in Michigan. So now we have the exciting opportunity to have a conversation with some amazing people, Chris, and I know you're going to introduce them to our audience.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Before I get there, I want to say 2 things.
Yep.
There are a few different groups on campus making Valentine's cards, including Red Graphics, which is our great club connected to our graphic arts degree program here. And so please take advantage of that. I will admit that as I was preparing for today, I realized that Valentine's Day is next week. So I will be going over there right after we're done to that table.
At least glad that you figured that out today.
And correct. And anyway, but there are some other clubs and there's some other times when Red Graphics will be taking Valentine's card orders, and they're an amazing group of talented students. So please take advantage of that. You'll probably get a really special card out of it. Also, remember, just a reminder that our askus@lewisu.edu email is on the screen, is on the screen at the bottom of the screen here. And please feel free to ask us questions, ask our guests questions, and we will get them onto the show. Also, if you're watching a recorded version of this show, please also ask questions, and we will we'll answer them or forward them to our guests, and they can respond to you even if it's not live. So please feel free to take advantage of that and communicate with us. So I'm really pleased to welcome 2 guests today. First, Professor Annie Calhoun, who is in her first year as an assistant professor of theater at Lewis. She is an actor, improviser, and writer. Her long history in theater education has spanned work with other colleges such as DePaul, as well as coaching professional actors in Los Angeles. She has a special passion for arts education in the middle school, high school space, and was on the founding teams of 2 public arts schools in Chicago and Los Angeles. She is somehow currently pursuing her second MFA in screenwriting. The first one was in acting. And she has performed on a number of theater and improv stages in Chicago and Los Angeles. Our second guest, Eduardo Cortez, is a forensic criminal investigation major with a theater minor. He's from the Chicago area. We'll ask him more specifically about that, and went to St. Patrick's High School in Chicago. Annie and Eduardo, welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful to be with you.
Thanks
Thanks so much for taking the time. I'm actually gonna describe it now, and then I'll ask you questions. So time out. One thing. We're celebrating the opening of the Sun Serpent, which will open in the Philip Lynch Theater tomorrow. Is that correct? With performances this weekend and next weekend. And so we'll talk about that, but we'll maybe get there in a minute to talking about the Sun Serpent. So I want to start with you, Annie, a little bit. Tell us about what you were doing right before you came to Lewis and how that has gone in the first year. And I can't believe it's the first year. It seems like
I know.
it's like 3 years to me. But
Yeah, August seems like a long time
yeah.
ago.
It does.
Well, I'm really enjoying going backwards. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now with this show and this cast. And this year has been really lovely in a lot of ways, especially coming off of the COVID years and really getting to work with students more in depth. Before this, I did some teaching at DePaul. Also, always have my hands in the middle school, high school space because I have a really large passion for theater education in K through 12. So, in a dual way, have always kind of been working on both. And even this fall, have done workshops in surrounding schools, like Martinez Middle School, which that relationship now has brought 260 sixth graders for Eduardo to perform for next week, for a matinee.
That's great.
Oh, that's so great.
Luke Hansick, I've done some workshops there. So I love that work. So the pairing is really nice, and I hope to in the future kind of also have students come along and do some work with the schools in the area.
So can I ask, Chicago and LA, and I know you've done a lot of improv, and obviously LA is kind of the one of the centers of acting in the world, but did you grow up?
Chicago was one of the centers.
It is. No, that's what I was saying. Both Chicago and LA. That's why I'm getting to this. So these two places, did you grow up in this area, or did you come to Chicago because it was one of these acting improv centers?
Yeah, that's
and these two places that you've spent time seem like. So I just don't know if you grew up in LA or grew up in Chicago, or you were drawn to them because they're such
That's
centers
a great
of,
question.
Yeah,
I did grow up in Gurnee, Waukegan area, or I just switched like when there's a street that, and then did my undergrad in Indiana in theater education, and then came to Chicago for my MFA in acting, and just fell in love with the improv scene. So concurrently, just I think I graduated the same weekend from a couple improv schools here, and with my MFA, and I got to perform here, did some Second City work and IO, and then Los Angeles is famous for the Groundlings and UCB. UCB was founded by Amy Poehler, and it's also in New York City too. So I went through the Groundlings program. It's so much fun, and then even did a little bit of stand-up comedy in LA, and when I was in LA, focused more on writing and improv.
So could you tell the audience, and Chris and I, but maybe many people do know this, but I'm interested in the difference. And I know you use these techniques in both, but I guess what I would call, and I don't know, traditional acting and improv, and how you kind of train for those differently. So there's different, I assume, techniques or ways in which you coach people, teach people. What are, maybe many of us have seen both of them, but what is the difference in the kind of prep work that goes into it?
That's an awesome question, because I think that they often get put in two categories, and there's so much crossover. And actually, one of the methods that I teach is Viola Spolin, and she was west side of Chicago, social worker who brought a bunch of youth together that spoke different languages and were from different cultures, and she was tasked with like not entertaining, but giving them programming. And she developed all of these games that then her son Paul Sills took for Second City. Like he was the Second City starter. And so it's cool that like improv actually began in Chicago, began for diverse youth, and then she's often not credited because she was an anti-guru person. She was like, I don't, she's like, I'm a part. I'm in the ensemble. And so that improv that she began is like saying things spontaneously. It wasn't necessarily for comedic effect. And then her son kind of went into the arm of the comedic effects that come from improv. But for instance, one game I'll play to blend both, because what you really want is scripted material that feels like it's happening for the first time.
Yeah.
And so if you integrate them both in an acting class, it's really cool. So there's a game called Contact. That's a violist bowling game. And all it is like, let's say Eduardo's doing a scene, and this would never happen to Eduardo, but it's getting like kind of stale, like they're saying the lines over and over again. And so you could employ these improv games in rehearsal. Contact is just every time Eduardo says a line with a scene partner, they have to make physical contact in a new way. And of course, there'd be consent and say, like on the arm or, whatever. And usually the actors start having fun, start giggling while they're saying the scripted material, and they start to find new ways of doing it.
Right.
So that's the crossover. The traditional improv comedy is focusing on either long form or short form.
Yeah.
So you got comedy sports that's like Whose Line Is It Anyway kind of stuff.
Sure.
And then you've got these 8-member teams that get one suggestion and go for 30 minutes.
Right.
And just,
Because it seems like, we want to get to other questions, but I'm fascinated
Yeah, I can
by
go-
this. I know we could talk for hours,
about
but I mean, what I think of as an uninitiated person who doesn't know much is that, traditional acting is about memorizing lines.
Yes.
And improv is about being spontaneous
Yes.
and not have. And what you're saying is they actually
They're the
play
same,
off of each
really.
other, the same,
Yeah.
thing. Because I'm always so impressed by that. But when you're a teacher, Chris and I have both taught for many, many years. You write your lectures, and there is a little improv off of your lectures, and you're always quote unquote on stage with your students. But mostly, I would say I'm in the acting category as opposed to the improv. But different people do their teaching different ways.
But another thing I'm hearing you say, which I think is true, is that they're both traditional acting and improv is about the body moving in space.
My gosh,
And that's so much of what you're watching when you're watching theater is not really what people are saying. And
it's getting out of your head and into the space. So a lot of the acting blocks, everybody can act, but it's the fear that gets in the way. And so physicalizing often gets you out of this spinning. Am I doing it right? Because so much of our life is sitting and like our American education, following directions, getting it right. And this is about really listening to the inside. Yeah.
So now that I've drawn attention to that, why are you learning how to be a writer?
Oh man, I just
Sounds
love
like
it.
backwards to me.
Yeah, well, I think the improv training and all I've done with that has helped me be a really good writer and kind of hear the dialogue in my head and hear all the characters, and also be really flexible, because as a theater person and an improv person, you've got to sometimes give over to somebody else's idea and not be precious about those pages and be like, all right, that's got to go. And I've written a couple prose manuscripts for middle grade novels, but I really am loving this screenwriting program and learning to write. Yeah, and my love is like comedy with heart, like dramedy with heart, so you've got that vulnerable thing, but so the funny stuff too.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Eduardo, tell us about yourself. Tell us more specifically where you're from, and tell us about your journey to come to Lewis.
So I grew up in Chicago, more specifically around the Albany Park area. Grew up there for a couple of years, moved around a little bit more, but I always kind of just stayed in that area. Grade school went to St. Sylvester, which is in Humboldt Park, another big staple of Chicago area.
Yeah.
And then high school, St. Patrick High School, went there all 4 years. That's actually where my theater career kind of kickstarted.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay. Makes sense.
So it was my freshman year. I was taking one of those fine arts things because I didn't know what I wanted to do with art and all that.
Yeah.
So they put us in 3 different classes for like each part of the semester. So it would be, okay, so you're going to start off with an art class, do that for like 2-3 weeks. Now you're going to do a music class, and now you're going to do a theater class. And in that theater class, my teacher, or now director, told me, hey, I recognize your brother. He used to do backstage work. You should be on stage. And then I was like, you know what? Tennis isn't that important. Let me try this out. And I ended up loving it. Yeah.
So you acted in several plays.
Yes, my freshman year. Freshman year I only did one because it was like spring. It was the last one. It was the musical. And then I was still doing soccer my sophomore year, so I was in, I believe, 2 productions that year as well. And that was actually the first year I got my first lead. So that's when I was like, okay, I really want to do this. So junior year, I dropped soccer completely, and I did every show my junior year, which is 3. We always do 3 shows every year.
Right. Wonderful.
Wow. So tell me, because when Chris introduced you, and even pre-show, we were talking a little bit about forensic criminal investigation.
Right, yeah.
So was that something that in high school you also kind of discovered, or you have family members who are involved, or like how did that, and obviously they play together because you're doing both of them here, but tell me a little bit about that choice and whether, how that led, or whether the lead to Lewis was more about it maybe being a LaSallian school because you were at St. Pat's, or was it about, I want to do some acting and I'll find my major. So tell me a little bit about how that played out.
Yeah, so in high school I watched a lot of NCI. So it kind of got me a lot of like interest in like that field.
Sure.
Always investigating, always trying to find clues and trying to like level up your knowledge and all that. So in high school I did discover that pretty early on. And then in high school they actually added the class, a forensics class. So I was like, oh, I'm going to take that, see if I actually really want to do this.
Yeah.
And when I took the class, I was like, yeah, I want to do this. So I first entered Lewis with a biochemistry major, thinking that I wanted to be in the lab.
Yeah, they're similar, right?
Yeah, very similar. And then, stumbling through the year, I realized, you know what? I want to be more in the field. I don't really want to be stuck to the lab. I want to actually go out there, look at the crime scenes, and actually investigate and find evidence for them to use in the lab.
Sure, sure.
So is it exactly like on TV?
From what I'm seeing, there's a lot of similarities, but not. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. Well, we were talking beforehand, and maybe you could also as a kind of plug for, like, we want to plug theater, but we also want to plug FCI and the whole criminal justice field.
Yeah.
So there is this very unique thing down at the University of Tennessee called the Body Farm.
Body farms, yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of people don't know what that is.
From my knowledge of the body farms, haven't been to one, really want to go to one. It's an open field where they have bodies and they take classes, or people would go there to look at the bodies and examine them and kind of just like practice what you would actually do in the field at an actual crime scene.
Right. And my understanding, because both here and I've had them explain,
And
so
we do
different stages of
travel-
decomposition.
we do
travel there.
study to there.
Yeah, we do. We
from
take
Lewis.
many of our students. But so this is about, like, you're learning a body decomposes at this rate, and in the winter less, and in the sun. So here's a body that's been out there for 6 months, and then you dig that one up, or this one that was 1 month, but they take cadavers and let them decompose and let students come in and figure out whether this was a stab wound or a shot, which is fascinating. And maybe there's, I don't know if there's any connection between theater and that, but it does feel like, and so maybe, let me ask both of you how your life experience plays into being an actor. So here's part of what I'm thinking, the connection there.
Right.
Go to the body farm, you're digging up this body, and like it changes you right after. I would think it would. I've never been there, but I would think it would change me to be around that. So how does one's experience, kind of birth to whenever one starts acting, play into being an actor? How does that and how do you use it as an actor? You use it as an actor, but also you use it as a director. Like, how do you draw on, like, I need you to be whatever. I need you to cry in this scene. How do I get somebody to like draw on their own experience to like actually authentically cry, as opposed to,
Yeah. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of forms to acting that we see a lot. I think one of the biggest forms is method acting, where an actor would take, personal emotions and release them on the spot. Or they would, I think one of the biggest examples of method acting is Jared Leto. When he was performing as Joker, he did a lot of crazy things, and that kind of was what like manifested his Joker persona. But for me personally, when I'm on stage and I need to be emotional, I kind of just take a minute to breathe. And then I think about, okay, what does this scene need? What do I need to do in this scene? How do I get to my point across? If I'm yelling at someone, am I screaming, or am I yelling in disappointment? Am I yelling in just trying to be firm? For example, in this show, Sun Serpent, a lot of that emotion comes from power. As one of my characters, it's all power. It's all, I'm asserting my dominance because I rule over all of you, and what I say is going to happen. So I think it's just a lot of where that emotion comes from, and you know, in the scene, where are you in that scene? So yeah.
That's such a great question, I think, because like I have a 2 and a 4-year-old right now, and they're like amazing actors. And it's like we're all born with the ability to play, and that's how we processed our life in the first 10 years, is like we acted things out. And a lot of times it was stuff that we were trying to process or we hadn't gone through. And so I think what Eduardo was saying was really important for me as a director and a teacher. What he mentioned was yell and to overpower, and those are actions. And so you can coach somebody to do an action. You can't make somebody or coach somebody to feel something because it's elusive. It's like the genie, you know, like you can, so what you can do is you can set up the circumstances to rub the lamp, which are, what do you really want in the scene, and how are you going to get it? So if I really want a cookie, I really, really want it, I could beg for it, I could flatter you a little bit, like, oh, you guys look so nice today, you know, and that you can always do no matter what happened before the show. And so it frees you from feeling like I have to blank. I think that's something that can keep some people away from theater, is like, oh, I'm going to have to, like, and it's like, you don't have to have done and experienced the things in the Sun Serpent, and we can do something, a little game called an as if, you know? So Eduardo yelling at this other character, that instance maybe never happened in your life, but there's a lot of as ifs, right? It's as if my younger sibling did blank, you know? And I think going back to Viola Spool and stuff, if it's game-based and play-based and action-based, it doesn't dredge up necessarily somebody's trauma, because we never want to do that, you know, or like make somebody go through something again on stage, and then it actually becomes a little vortex of me feeling instead of me actioning towards somebody else and connecting. But like Eduardo said, there are other methods like method acting, and you know, those folks, they don't have the best reputation in Hollywood because often they're not giving, they're taking, you know, like the space, the backstage offset becomes about. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Sun Serpent.
Tell us about the play. Joan and I are going Friday.
Yay.
We have tickets for tomorrow. Is that tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah, I know, geez, it's tomorrow.
Anyway.
Yeah, so the Sun Serpent is, it takes place during the time of Mesoamerica, and the conquistadors coming to Mexico, more famously known as Eduardo Cortez. And the story focuses on 2 brothers, 2 completely different brothers. The younger brother, who is very playful, he is very optimistic. And then you have the older brother who has this vendetta against the Aztecas. And I should also mention that these 2 brothers are part of the Totonacs tribe, which resided on the coast of Mexico, Venezuela, I think, and Puebla, around those areas of Mexico today. And it's just they work for the emperor of the Aztecas by delivering fish to the emperor, because the emperor loved his fish, is one of the lines in the show. And it's a beautiful story, a really beautiful story about something that really tragically happened in our history. And I think it's just told in a very beautiful way, aesthetically, but also in the form of storytelling. It gets its point across, and it like appeals to the audiences of, if you have like trouble with your families, or if you have this whole thing of, you're my brother, I want to be your brother, but I need to do something else for me first. And it's really just like that whole story of brotherhood.
And what role do you play?
I play 3 roles in the show. I play Telememe, who is the older brother, Emperor Matecasuma, who is the emperor of the Azteca, and I play an old porter who helps young Anáhuac on his journey.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So who is the writer, and how old was this play? You know, when was this play written?
Jose Cruz Gonzalez is the writer, and it was commissioned in Arizona for like a Playworks thing. So it's not a children's show, but it is for middle school and up. So that's why we've got a middle school coming.
Interesting.
within the last, it's not more than a decade old, so
Okay.
it's been, yeah.
Interesting.
And so, how do you think of it, Annie, as a director in terms of the different roles that plays play in society? So this is an educational play, right? Now, and then there's an entertainment. So plays educate, they entertain, they sometimes can be cathartic. So how do you think about, and obviously you're responsible for choosing, we're going to do this play, as opposed to the 20,000 other plays that you could do.
Right,
So how do you
right.
think about those roles that acting and theater represent for society, and why you would choose one over another?
I think a really good play does both, right? It's going to educate in some way, and it's going to entertain. And the difference between a lecture and a play is that through story, our guard goes down a little bit, and we kind of let some things in that we may not if it's just it's a lecture. I think this play was really important to do because it elevates underrepresented voices on the stage and stories that aren't told as often.
Right.
And cast members have mentioned too that we had a cultural consultant and a language consultant. My friend Oscar Valdez, who's in the grad program with me right now, and is writing a movie about this time period. And when he, as a side note, but when I was reading part of his script in class and he had the Nahuatl language, I was like, oh my gosh, that's in the Sun Serpent. Will you help us? And so he's been a consultant on the show.
That's great.
But I think this play is really beautiful. It's almost like a poem. So there's 30 scenes. Again, it elevates underrepresented voices, but it's also really entertaining and really delightful. And Gonzalez pairs tragedy with humor in like almost every scene in a way that's extreme, because there's extreme tragedy, but there's some real funny moments. I mean, we have a bird pooping on somebody's head that he literally wrote in the play. So I think I'm always looking for an artist who can do that, or a writer who can do that, and kind of show all sides of humanity. And yeah, and the themes are deep, man. The themes are really deep.
So,
Yeah.
Annie, what does a director do?
Oh boy. Okay. They're the guide, you know, and so I think they're the person that wants to bring out the best in the crew, because we've got a lot of wonderful crew working on this, and student designers, and the people on stage, and reflect back a little bit of because as an actor, you're not always sure how you're fitting in with the whole picture visually. So I just get to kind of guide, and it's a real privilege, you know, and I think as a director, I've been directed by wonderful folks who come alongside and who see you as an individual and who can pick out your strengths, but also things that just need to be moved out of the way. Because like I said, I think my job is to just remove the obstacles or to point them out so we can get them out of the way, because, oh my gosh, this cast is just really beautiful and the things that they're bringing to the table.
And maybe, since you mentioned it, we were planning on asking about who are all the, not necessarily by name, but like how many people does it take to put on a production like this, and what are some of the roles that are behind it all?
Yeah.
In addition to being on stage.
And maybe just to add to that, so that you're speaking to our audience in a way of, you could also do this.
Yeah,
Like we need
sure.
these kinds of people, but not everybody
Yeah.
may want to be an actor, but
Yeah.
some people might love to pick up a hammer or, you know, sew a garment or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
right? So I may just talk about the ways that our community can get involved.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Do you want to start?
So yeah, sure. So
And I'll jump in.
the cast that we have right now is a cast of 6. I believe originally this script was written for a cast of 3, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. So yeah,
So
there's
there were multiple roles.
multiple
Yeah,
roles.
each in the
Yeah.
original
Design.
played like 5 roles each.
Yeah.
At least.
Okay, interesting.
Sorry, what was what
Well, the
else?
question is about,
backstage.
you know,
Backstage,
who,
who are
yeah,
the
who
other
can get
people
involved or
working?
how many people need
I
to do
mean,
a show.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like anyone could get involved.
Oh, yeah.
It's really a show that brings out the creativeness of a lot of people. Especially we have, like I mentioned, we have a cast of 6, and a lot of people play multiple roles, like myself. So it's really just that being able to kind of meld between roles, and one character speaks this way, or another character speaks this way, or
Right,
you know.
sure.
But I believe, like, with an even bigger cast, everyone could get a role.
Yeah, and we've got anybody can audition in the community. We even had a staff member audition because staff could audition too. And you don't have to be a major, you don't have to be a minor to audition. The onstage roles are obvious and clear, but we had 2 students designing the masks and the costumes. Elisa and I think goes by Lart, another student. Right now we've got a student stage manager, a student assistant stage manager who's an English major. You know, we've got some majors and non-majors. We have a student that designed sound, a brand new student running the light board, Alex Kogan. Nick Brand designed all of there's projections in the show. So currently I think there's 6 on stage, six run crew, people that show up every night, and then our costume team that doesn't have to show up every night, but they've been helping out. Props, set design, but anybody can walk in and ask our wonderful technical director and Professor Andrew Nelson, like if you're interested in designing lights, again, you don't have to be a major. This is a really open, warm community. Yeah.
Well, I just think that a lot of people, you know, when you say there's 6 people in the cast, some people just think that theater is about those 6 people.
And it's not,
And it's so much more, right? And I think even for people getting that experience of running a light board, or you know, these people that are grips, and you know, there's so many in theater and movie production, everything. There's so many things that go behind this in terms of the production.
And the other thing there, before we move on, is there are 2 professors involved.
Yes.
You know, Professor Nelson as well. But basically, when people go to a show here, it is run, and you know, everything is done by students.
Right.
Vast, just like the show that we're doing right now.
Yes, exactly.
So it's
done by students.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful for our student
you know, I think sometimes people don't think about that or know that when they're sitting in the audience. I mean, they see students everywhere, but they don't. You know, they really are in charge of the whole experience.
The whole thing. And I consider everybody part of the ensemble. You know, the people that are behind the scenes too. And
yeah, I just think it's an invitation. You know, I guess what I want to say is if you're a first year student and you're in your 2nd semester and you're like, I don't exactly know what to do, you may want to start doing costumes, you know, helping with costumes, or helping literally paint the scenery in the stage, but because you're going to meet some great people. And I think we always want to invite people into that.
Absolutely true. And Eduardo's a minor. We have the major in theater. So Annie, maybe you could talk a little bit about the department.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
People who are.
I think this department's really special because it's small enough that you don't have to wait in line for your turn, you know? And it's really personal, and we get to know the students really well. And we have a lot of opportunities. So small and mighty, you know, and the fact that like you get to do everything. So it's a BA in theater, which means you're taking classes in all areas, like we were just mentioning. I do most of the performance classes, which are acting, voice and speech, dance and movement, improvisation. We may be looking at a theater for social change class coming up. And then Dr. Trudeau teaches some of the history classes and modern drama and text analysis. And then Professor Nelson teaches stage tech classes, which again span so many awesome things. Right now he's working on a lighting class, lighting design class. So his students are on a board, designing lights, sound, costume props. Celeste would do a props or a costume practicum. And Dave Pamato is assistant technical director, so he helps with that too. And the minor is actually really doable. So it really pairs nicely with a lot of other majors. It's not a really high credit minor. And I know Eduardo's getting the minor. I had an acting class that counts as a gen ed that can count as your arts, you know, so I had nursing students and education students in acting first semester, and it was really fun. And as you spoke about, teachers have to perform, you know, like it's a great, you know, class to take for potential teachers. And but I've really loved, I've been felt welcomed in, and I think that feeling is really pervasive in the department of kind of welcoming majors, non-majors, and minors, and anybody who wants to be involved.
Wonderful. There's one other thing we want to ask you about. We're almost out of time, which is that we noticed in some of the early publicity for the Lewis University TEDx Day, which is an annual event now on campus. You're one of the featured TEDx speakers. Can you tell us about how you went about? I know you have to apply and get chosen and all that stuff, but maybe just tell us a little about how that process works and what you're going to give us a little advertisement.
Well, I saw the like a request for submissions, and I got really excited because I've liked watching TEDx talks, TED Talks for a really long time. Brene Brown's is, you know, the one that like hooked me, you know, and then went into my rabbit hole of Brene Brown, and so I applied. I sent in a video, proposed an outline, and my title is Play-Doh, Play-Doh, and Play, a guide to squishing fear.
The second Play-Doh is
the philosopher
Play-Doh.
this Play-Doh, and then the philosopher Play-Doh, and because he's got a famous quote that you can learn more from a person from an hour of play than a year of conversation. And so so it looks at how we can replace fear with curiosity is my
that sounds great.
my idea. But yeah, I'm really excited, and it's March 2nd. It's like coming up really
Yeah,
fast.
and how's that going? Because you know, Chris and I go to these every time.
We just saw a graphic of the show, so it's great.
And talking to the people that do prep, there just is so much practice in doing these.
Yeah. We've got a couple. I think this Friday, next Friday, we're going to practice as a group of 5, and you really got to memorize these. I've got my memorizing to do. And
no improv.
No, these are these are very memorized and very. I also teach an intro to comm class, so I'm using my tools that I teach the students, you know, and outlining. So I'm excited. I think they're utilized so like every class I'm in, we'll pull a TED Talk clip, and you know, so I'm excited to be a part of that side of it.
That's
Great. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you both for taking the time the day before the show opens, and it's been really fun talking with you.
Thank you both for being here. Our guests make the show, as well as the behind-the-scene people behind this wall. There are a bunch of students also that are making us look great and making sure that, you know, everything's going well. So thank you to our production crew, and thank you everybody for being here. We're really grateful that you joined us. I'll just, you know, say a few things. We again hope that you will enjoy some of these events. That we went through a whole list of events, but there's so much opportunity to do things on campus, from the theater production to going over to the gallery to going to lectures both on campus and off campus in Joliet. So please take advantage of all those things. Watch your your teams online, because some of your friends in class are competing off-site. And have a really wonderful week. Enjoy Valentine's Day, and many blessings to you and all those you love.